Ladies and gentlemen, this RedGamingTech.com video, we have news on the PC version of Call of Duty Ghosts. Previous titles in the Call of Duty series on the PC haven't really looked that much better than their console versions, and one of the primary reasons behind this is that they were basically using exactly the same graphical assets as, say, the Xbox 360 versions of the title. Therefore, aside from, say, playing in 1080p at 60 frames per second, we didn't really get a massively different looking version. This is not going to be the case, however, with the PC version of Ghosts. Instead, Call of Duty Ghosts is going to actually look better than even the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game, and this is all according to the executive producer of the title, Mark Rubin. So I'm going to give you guys, of course, as you'd expect, the interview. I'll read out the interview, and then of course we'll do some analysis. So he was talking to Kotaku, and he said, and I quote, "PC is taking a different tack from previous games in the series." He also mentioned about how, once again, as I just said, the same graphical assets as the 360 version and PS3 version of the game were reused for the PC. And then he said, now PC has its own assets, it's going to look better than any Call of Duty we've made on the PC. He also said, and I quote, "They're actually using an even higher version in many cases than on the next-gen consoles, from a texture standpoint." However, he did stress that graphics are the only thing that the PCs are going to have better. So in other words, it's not like, for example, we're going to have better multiplayer on the modes on the PC, or, much better levels or larger levels or anything like that. It's just going to be a simple case of the graphics look shinier. And just for a moment, I'd like to speak a little bit my thoughts on this, because as you guys, regular viewers know, I like to do some analysis, and this is something I'm expecting to see quite heavily. The primary reason behind all of this, as we've discussed in a couple of other videos previously, is that the PS4 and Xbox One are going to be using the PC as common ground development, or rather the developers are going to be using the PC as a common ground to develop upon. And in other words, they're going to develop the PC versions of the title, and then they're going to start modifying the title for either the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4, simply because the PC, of course, uses DirectX 11, and for the most part, as you can imagine, the Xbox One, of course, uses a version of DirectX, and the PlayStation 4 uses an API that's very similar to DirectX, and so you could see the crossover. And so we're going to most likely be getting versions of the game on the PC, which are going to be much superior ports to what they were back in the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. There are certain titles, like, for example, Dark Souls, which really comes to mind when I'm thinking about this, and I don't blame the developers specifically, because after all, they weren't even going to originally release the title on PC, so it's very good that they eventually did. However, there were noticeable issues with the port, and specifically the graphics, apart from a few bits here and there. If you were to do a real side-by-side look at the two, even with the fix, even with the fan-made fix to increase the internal resolution the game is rendered on, it's not like it's night and day differences here. It's not a huge discrepancy between the two systems. Some games, of course, much bigger differences than others, but I think we're going to get to the point now where PC is able to run straight forward. It's also very interesting from my point of view that just a couple of days ago, actually just yesterday, I think, an ex-Valve employee, I've forgotten his name, but you can Google it. It's actually on the Red Gaming Tech website right now as well, front page, but he actually left Valve and has gone to Microsoft, because Microsoft now are taking the PC as a lot more serious of a game platform, and of course a lot of developers are as well. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that it's x86/64 architecture, and I have been saying for a long time that I think that's fantastic news for the PC as a general whole. So yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to the Call of Duty Ghosts, and of course, when November rolls on by, I'm going to be doing graphical analysis of it versus the PC and PS4 and Xbox One titles, because I'm going to be very, very curious to see what they're going to be doing with the title, to see exactly what differences are going to be in terms of textures, frames per second, and so on. I'm really curious to see if developers are going to be trying to concentrate and focus upon that 60 frames per second goal that, of course, John Carmack himself has been really vocal upon. John believes that it's simple. We focus on 60 frames per second and we get what we can out of the hardware graphically, but we don't compromise our creative visions for, shinier graphics at the sake of frame rate. Other developers, of course, don't really feel like that. They believe, for example, 30 FPS on a lot of titles is fine, and I do agree that not all titles do need 60 frames per second. Having said that, my personal standpoint is I don't really like FPS titles that aren't 60. I just noticed that it feels a little bit off, and John himself was extremely vocal on their release of Rage for the PC, and he did mention he's actually very vocal upon just how bad the Rage port was to PC, simply because, of course, it was using the id Tech 5 engine, and of course a lot of the issues with the id Tech 5 were primarily focused upon, well, it wasn't really designed for PC in mind. It was a very console-orientated engine, and that really hurt the performance of the game, the look of the game, and so on. And I have done some stuff, by the way, on the graphics of Rage on the PC, so I'd actually recommend you check that out as well. It's quite a short video, so you could just search Rage on the channel and it'll pop up, don't you know. Anyway, it's been a fairly brief video, but obviously we've been covering a lot more on PC, PlayStation, and all the other good as you'd expect on RGT, so go ahead and check out the channel if you don't normally, if you're not a regular subscriber, shall I say. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.